Primary Tourist, Chapter 10. You know, usually I talk about the past, maybe touch on my hopes for the future, but I never really talk about my situation here so much. I'm not sure why that is. I tell myself it's because I want to stay positive, but I think it's because I don't want to be rude to my host. I mean, I don't blame you, but Jesus, some of these people that work here are even worse than some of the people that live here, and that's saying something, I'll tell you. It doesn't help that half the people that live here don't even know where they are, poor bastards. But that doesn't help the rest of us, poor bastards. I gotta tell you, sir, some of the staff here, some of them are top notch, but some of them, man, they don't fucking care. And they're in my living room, closest thing I got, that's for sure. Have some respect. Sorry I had to get that off my chest, but I don't know how else to express it, and it fucking makes me sick if you want to know the truth. But not you, sir. Not you at all. So, where was I? Oh, yeah, here. Shit, I thought so. And that's the whole thing, isn't it? I can't even tell you what sucks the most. Is it the poor demented woman that cries nurse? Is it the roommate stealing your laptop on his way out the door? Is it the hot overnight shift resenting having their sleep interrupted by your paltry requests for aid? Which wins the boy sucks to be you award? Again, not you. Not you at all. You're different. Honest. It's just so frightening living here. You seem like a pretty compassionate fellow, but my parents lived in a nursing home, so I thought I knew a thing or two about living in a nursing home, but boy, was I wrong. Because it's so different when you can't go home, when you live amidst the insanity. So, it's not a knock on you. I know you think you know, or like most people say, you can imagine. But you really can't. You can't imagine how soul drenching it all is. How you could be so happy to have visitors, but embarrassed to be living in such a dump. And when they leave, you're so envious because you're here for who knows how long. You wouldn't happen to know that, would you, sir? How much longer in the first tier of hell? All depends? That's all you got? Jesus, can't you at least throw me a bone? I'm hanging by a thread here. What's that? Someday? Well, it's not much, but I guess it's something. It'll have to do. But in the meantime, all my best relationships are with inanimate objects, and they're all dysfunctional. Like me and my cane. If that's not a dysfunctional relationship, I don't know what is. I wish I had the strength to leave her. I can't live without her. It's all about me. Or how about my wheelchair? I wish she were slimmer and taller. And again, I can't live without her. Man, I'm pathetic. I think the worst part is not having my own space, having to share my space with not only my roommate, but with all sorts of people, even the nice ones, even the hotties on staff. I was lonely for them. I wanted them to come in, but I wanted to be able to say, please come in, like they were requesting, not ordering. I'm not into that. And even worse are the uninvited residents that just meander into my room like they own the fucking place. There's one guy that has no idea where he is, but knows he doesn't want to fucking leave. And the only word he knows how to say is no when you ask him to get out of the fucking way, excuse my French. Come to think of it, maybe if I was calmer, was a nicer person, maybe then he'd have cooperated more. What the hell am I doing being mad at him anyway? It's not his fault. But whose fault is it? That's where things get hazy. Anybody paying attention can see that stroke victims don't belong with advanced Alzheimer patients, that no living thing, never mind humans, should live in any nursing home, least of all this shithole. So who made that decision not just for me, but for all us Paul bastards? And is there anything we can do about it? You know, this is not the first time I had the feeling of helplessness, even before the stroke. Love is kind of like that, especially unrequited love. And I may not be an expert on much, but I'm an expert on that. Much painful study. But there was something delicious about it, too. Better to be in unrequited love than not in love at all. And I should know. I've been both. Sarah and I never really had a lot happening physically, but in some ways it was like I was married to her. Like who else but a husband would spend his Saturday comparing paint colors and think he died and went to heaven? It really didn't matter what we did. Just being with her made it all worthwhile. The most fun ever. She was from the middle of the country but had that city sass. She made no apologies, but make no mistake about it, in the nicest way. Usually. And often with great humor. Ha 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 ha. Great humor. When things are so good 97% of the time, why worry about a lousy 3% of the time? I can only explain it by saying she had a spell on me, and I couldn't tell whether it was white magic or black magic. Like the lady says, I'm over my head, and it sure feels nice. Usually. The lady didn't say that last part. I figured that one out for myself. I learned that the hard way. It was after one of them 3% times I figured it was time to give Rod a call. Yowza! 90% of the time, that's how he answered the phone. Well, I should say, when I called him. That's easy for you to say. Why, yes, it is. How goes it? Oh, all right, I guess. I don't even think I believed it myself. What's her name? I was afraid to say it because he and Erica had already read me the riot act about Sarah. I was about to say something when Rod interrupted my thought, whatever that was. Who remembers? Oh, Jesus, tell me it's not the karate expert. How many times do I have to tell you those aren't the kind of kicks you want? Both kinds are available, I assured him. It gets worse, believe me. Listen very carefully. Run! The best place to be is where she isn't. But that's exactly where I want to be. Get my dilemma? Start thinking with your big head. Not to brag, but I kind of am. Oh, I forgot. You're Italian. My condolences, man. But still, no joke. Stay away. My little head knows that. So what are you guys up to? Remember, this was before they made the move over to New Hampshire, before my New Hampshire. There were wannabes about always, but I had never been to the carnival. Back then, I thought Sarah was the carnival. You want to go camping? You answer me first. Where camping? More details were forthcoming, like what I could borrow for a tent and a sleeping bag, but I knew I was in. I was in a voluntary no Sarah zone for a while, and I was looking for something to fill the void. Actually, it was a stupid dare on my part. I dared her not to call me for a week. Kind of stemmed from denying deep feelings for me while constantly calling several times an hour, never mind day. Like not calling for a week would prove anything. Like I said, stupid. So camping sounded like a good idea to me, even though both of them, especially Rod, were a tad too gung-ho on the whole roughing it aspect of it, even for me. And I was up for anything. But you know what? They got to see some of the most beautiful scenery in the whole world that way. In fact, some of the most incredible stuff I've seen in my life was directly related to the fact I was honored to have Rod as a friend. Jesus, it's not as if I didn't have some breaks along the way. I'll be the first to admit it. To be honest about it, I kind of deserved the stroke. I mean, in a ignoring a time bomb kind of way. But I never did anything to deserve this place. Jesus, not even John Edwards could sink that low. It was a beautiful weekend. I don't even remember where, but I remember it was beautiful with lots of laughter, even more music filling the air. And love, too. But right before we took off for the weekend, they double teamed me, and God loved them. They were right. But have you, sir, ever been in love? Who could tell you anything? Especially for the young in spirit. And I was young in spirit back then. They tried, and they did manage to convince my mind. My damn mind. It convinced me. It made for a much better weekend and then some, but I crumbled to my heart, as we all do in the end. The head just can't win. It's really hard to convince the heart. You know what was so hard to fathom was that there was a life without a carnival. Sarah or the New Hampshire primary, your heart or the well being of the free world, it's all the same game. Except in one game, the stakes are so much higher. I shudder to think about how high the stakes are outside of the carnival, how somber things could be, and things can just blindside you. That was never more apparent than in March of '08. I was at work at Circle Rep selling theater subscriptions, and I was having a rough, no sales day, but I thought I had one on the line when I noticed a call from my brother. I couldn't wait for renewals, which may have had its own challenges, but was pretty much like shooting fish in a barrel. But that was still a few days away. I cursed the one that got away. I called my brother. Hello? He sounded tired. Hey, Bill, this is Spike. What's up? Nick is in the hospital. Nick was his son. I could tell by his voice that it was not good. Preliminary reports indicate cancer. There was a silence that seemed like minutes, but was actually only a few seconds. It was brain cancer. He had been looking and feeling better than he ever had. Then he got a cold, they thought. A real bad cold. What hospital is he in? Rhode Island Hospital. When are visiting hours? Pretty much any time. There was another long silence. It's just not fair, I said. That's exactly right. It's just not fair. The conversation ended. He had a lot of calls to make, each one worse than the previous one. Poor Nick. He came a long way to get here. Halfway around the world and back. A long way to go to get a shit deal. Just when he figured out where home was. Anybody mind if I take off a little early? I got a family emergency. Of course. Is it going to be okay? It doesn't look it. Cancer, it looks like, in the brain. There was a pause, uncomfortably long it seemed to me. My nephew. Half as long a pause, then. 32 years old, answering the unasked questions. The bus leaves in about 10 minutes. And who can't forgive me for not rejoicing in the fact that I can walk to the bus? A real big deal when you look at it from my eyes now. You know what I'm saying? A wonder I'm here at all. Did you ever think of that, sir? Never mind the stroke, but that law of attraction thing. What that night probably, but maybe morning, even afternoon, whenever it was. What was the thing that made your mother think, no, not think, feel that your father was a smart choice? Maybe a good choice, who knows? What are the odds you'll be here at all? It's really something like a miracle or something. Way tougher than winning the lottery. And then think about brain cancer. Jesus, those are tragic odds. For anybody. And Nick, man, he had come so far in his few years. Jesus, he was only 5 when he got here from Korea. Old enough to know something's going on, not old enough to know what. I guess what we think of as an orphanage, he thought of as home, in a funny kind of way. You know how every generation has its legends? Kind of. What it is really is oral history. But, the stories. Well, there was one story that told you so much about Nick. The first spring after he came over, my sister-in-law took his winter coat, for spring storage. And I don't know if he made a scene. There was a lot of them back then, kids. But either way, that isn't the point. The kid, I think he was 5 years old, and I don't think he knew any English at all, but he decides he was going to run away. You can see why if you thought it through. In the orphanage, they'd give things for them to wear for a day. But these folks, they gave me that coat, and I kept it all winter. But now they want it back? The hell with this. I'm history. He made it down the street, which was no small deal because the corner between the driveway and the street was a doozy. Imagine the, excuse my French, but can you imagine the balls on that kid? I mean, it's a funny story, especially because it was my brother-in-law that found him, but Jesus, for a little kid, he had a lot of courage. He was going to need all of it. Poor kid. Puts the whole carnival bullshit in perspective, doesn't it? Hillary wins, Obama wins, big fucking deal. Nick loses. Beautiful day means nothing. Nick loses and it's just not fair. That's the news, and I can't turn it off. Isn't it time yet, sir? Really? Man, this time moving slow shit, I don't think I like it. Okay, let's talk about the carnival then. There's a lot more to say about that, that's for sure. My specialties are asylums and carnivals. New Hampshire is beautiful anytime, you bet, but there's always a little something added in the air at carnival time. How about the State House lawn for iconic symbolism, for Christ's sake? The day before the primary, John McCain scored it. No one else wanted it, but Jesus, free airtime, iconic shot of the POW survivor right in front of the State House. All the stations had that shot, and there I was, right next to the bus, where the people you thought would be more real were somehow less real. It really was about the biggest bus. Damn, it's pretty, that big bus, as big buses go. And they go pretty far on TV. But you know something? Once you've tasted the real world, the carnival, well, it almost disappears. It seems so silly. And not always in a bad way. Sometimes when the cherry blossoms and the women are at their prettiest, who cares about a lousy carnival? Nick would be the first to say enjoy life, but enjoy something real. Don't be a slave to a carnival wheel. Where she stops, nobody knows. In your honor, Nick, I choose to live where things are real. Like humor and courage, not as a slogan, but as the way to live your last days. How could I go back after that? To do that? Or any carnival? And how about that great white, writing, leaving something for future generations? Where did my muse go? Hey, Moby Dick, what of it? Can't you throw a guy a bone? Even now, in this hellhole, if only I could write. Even not walking. I can live without walking if only I could write it down. Even at this, well, you know I don't mean asylum literally, but damn, there is madness about. I'm telling you, sir, if I could write, who needs to walk? I can't say there's no material here, that's for sure. Damn muse. Must not be in season. Well, anyway, sir, I know there's a little bit more time, but I really don't have anything else to say. Damn it, though. I hate it when time moves so slow. Primary Tourist, Chapter 11. I'll tell you, sir, nothing beats the carnival, New Hampshire style. I mean, as carnivals go. In New Hampshire, it was really more of a festival than a carnival, until Iowa. After Iowa, it was a carnival inside a festival, you name it. It was all there, a 2-year build-up. There's always somebody there, even the Great White, or so I heard. Just missed him. Like, take that time I went to Manchester with Steve. It was real early then, but there were signs of an oncoming festival. And the next time I went to New Hampshire, it was after Iowa. We're in the middle of the festival by now. And that includes airwaves, all politics all the time. And media blitz is never more audible than in a car on your way to an event. Hey, wait, did I say my first time on TV was that time at the Howard Dean event? Well, I forgot. I got some pretty decent FaceTime at a Wesley Clark event on C-SPAN. It was after the main event, after the speeches and the hoopla, and the prettiest of fans in the field, but I guess hotties don't equal votes. C-SPAN followed the candidate after the speeches. Cameras were rolling. It's funny, but I completely had no idea I was on TV that time either. And we're not talking a quick shot. It was my whole question. I asked him if he can afford to beat Bush, which I thought was a fair question because, let's face it, I was one of who knows how many millions of people that were sick of Bush, and we didn't want it to be close enough to steal this time either. The party has the money. They can foot the bill. Don't worry about it, he told me. That's an exaggeration of his answer, and come to think about it, I guess I didn't ask that exact question. The cameras were still rolling when he asked me a question. Can I count on your vote Tuesday? Oh, you had to do it, Wes, didn't you? You had to ask that question because now I have to answer you. And I'm going to tell you the truth, although I don't have to. I'm a Rhode Island native. And I knew that that was not the answer he was looking for the look on his face said it all. The way he completely dismissed me told me all I needed to know. I knew he was no more than a footnote to a footnote as a politician, a statesman, and even less as a human being. I knew that he might be able to finagle an invitation there, but he will never be, nor that he deserved to be, a resident at the White House. I could have told him that, but he never asked. I didn't even know about my television debut for a week. My friend in a wheelchair told me he heard the question, thought it was me, and then when I said I was from Rhode Island, that was the clincher. Funny. I used to call him my friend in a wheelchair. Ironic, ain't it? I would be the friend in a wheelchair for all my buddies these days. Strange how things change, isn't it? Except for your karma. It's just sometimes you haven't paid for your karma yet. But isn't that what a carnival is all about? All now, never mind consequences? Because you got to get by the carnival anyway. Then things change in South Carolina, Michigan. It's a different game. You don't have to look people in the eye and ask for your vote. And don't forget, South Carolina, especially on the Republican side, could get pretty down and dirty. We might be talking about President McCain. In '08, I got a pretty good idea about two of the three best carnivals in town, McCain and Obama, but missed on Hillary's except for making a primary day appearance at Hillary headquarters. At the time, I was buying into the common knowledge that Obama would stampede through New Hampshire on way to a cruise to the Democratic nomination, so I thought it was a funeral march I heard, not a celebration. I guess I was deafened by the hope and change. Who's against that? Time's gotta change. Hold on to hope with your life. You're going to need it later. But at the time, yeah, I sipped the Kool Aid, never taking a big gulp, knowing that actually winning, as amazing as that is, wouldn't be half as amazing as being as inspirational as a president as he was as a state senator at the Democratic convention in 2004. But it was Hillary, after all, who won New Hampshire, lived to celebrate time and many times over. And actually, Obama was so fucking inspirational, we didn't notice you couldn't get close to him. The superstar campaign taking the whole retail aspect away from his campaign. No eye to eye. It was more Hillary that was doing that. And she was right all along. The sky wasn't falling. Obama stepped up his game. She was right up to the end when she said she was the one, and well, slowly, most, but not all, everybody else saw it wasn't her, it was him. Then in 12, it was just weird. There were a bunch of not Romneys so bad that Romney himself didn't look so bad, except he didn't look so good either. To tell you the truth, the one Republican that I could live with was putting a ton of chips on New Hampshire. John Huntsman. You could see it was an uphill battle, though. You could tell he was too reasonable for that crowd. And against the big moneyed interest in a Tea Party environment, how does he think he's going to win the nomination? Even the aw shucks, much more genuine than Reagan to me, anyways, can't make the nut of going against both the moneyed elite and the wacko crazies. Jesus, that's a big chunk of Republicans he's got no shot with. Lucky independents vote, or he'd be dead already. Even so, when you get a hand for being the only Republican that believes in science, well, lots of Republicans that don't believe in science vote. As for the other candidates, well, Romney looked best. What's that tell you about the competition? And Gingrich, he was so fucking scared of Occupy people that he was tossing out uncommitted voters from his events. I can't really explain it, but if I was the paranoid sort, I'd think he was trying to avoid me. I'll tell you more some other time, but Jesus, just in the glimpse I saw him, he was even more of an asshole than I would have thought he was. And boy, if that don't tell you something, I guess nothing would. And Ron Paul would fool you because he kind of sounded reasonable, especially on defense. But if you scratch behind the whole basic itch he scratches, the best role for government, Ron Paul style, is no role for government. And I'm sorry, sir. But don't you think the genie's out of that bottle? He did have an interesting coalition, though. Liberty freaks on way too much caffeine and potheads on not nearly enough. Some crazy fucks, too. Great for political tourists, for the country, not so much. And poor Rick Santorum. He was a sitting duck for self righteous college kids and guerrilla political theater aficionados alike. Made him probably one of the juiciest subjects for political tourists in a may you live in interesting times curse kind of way, or maybe in a rubbernecking during horrendous car accidents kind of way. It looked like the Republicans, whether they like it or not, will have to nominate somebody. So every trip to the carnival is different, and you're different, and your circumstances is different. I mean, it was great having wheels in '04, but really I wish I had a sidekick. First sidekick in tourism I had was Nate, and it was kind of a perfect match. We were both potheads, and don't underestimate that bond. He really worked on getting the facts. Later, I'd learned he took his camera everywhere and took basic notes after all events, getting key details on paper before memory loses the thread. But I had the better memory. We both loved the carnival. But when all's said and done, we both wanted to fall in love with a guy or woman. It's not like I don't want to fall in love with Hillary, but what would Barry say? Anyway, back on that day, we were going to watch people work at Obama headquarters, but what we both felt we were doing was watching history being made. Him more than me, but he's young, hasn't been disappointed as much. Not so much in losses, but in wins that don't do as promised, or was that hoped for. We both have a love of Hunter Thompson. Perfect sidekicks. So, in the midst of, watching history, I wanted to see what time it was, so I reached for my cell phone. Uh-oh, can't find it. Perfect stoner moment. Can you do me a favor and call me, man? I lost my phone. Not here, man. Looking at the place like it was a cathedral, not a deserted mill, which I'm guessing will be empty again after the primary. Even though I had only a sip of the Kool-Aid, I got his point. And he guzzled the shit. We both looked at the activity going around and could feel history being formed. My phone can wait. We both knew that if Obama won New Hampshire, it could really be a sprint to Colorado. But what if he didn't even finish second? What if it was Edwards or even Richardson or even Biden? Remember, it might seem silly now, but no more ridiculous than Obama winning the nomination seemed to a lot of folks when the volunteers started streaming in just a few months ago. Lots of folks going door to door and Oprah Winfield star power, and the impossible happened. It just took a little longer. It wasn't long before we just felt like we were in the way. When we got to the car, I asked, "Hey man, give me a call." He did. No answer. "Current? Might as well." "Yeah, it's probably there." That was something, wasn't it? Yeah, the Obama folks, they're something. They've been working these hills for months. They're from all over. I talked to one kid from Boulder, just graduated, working the hills of Manchester for free. "What were you doing here?" "I got lost looking for Oprah tickets." "Understandable." I thought there'd be tickets at Obama headquarters, but no. Wild goose chase. Up very steep hills. Well, those guys walk those same hills. Wild goose chase? We shall see. You don't think he can win? I do think he can win. Thought so for a while now. Will he make a damn bit of difference? That's where my crystal ball gets hazy. It's got to be better than this. I just hope he can stop the bleeding. And, sir, I'd have to say, never mind the heightened expectations and real disappointments, but he stopped the bleeding. I don't think that's the legacy he wanted, but right now, almost ready for his second term to start, that's about where he is. And stopping the bleeding, that's not nothing. Not what we had dared to hope for, but something. Nate's phone rang. "Hello? Oh, that would be Spike's phone. He's here with me. We're heading over now." He hung up. "Current?" "You got it. We're heading the right way. That we are." I wonder if that was the hottie. I'm sure it was one of them. We were there in about a minute. It was the hottie I thought it was, or maybe I hoped that it was. We decided to have another coffee. I mentioned that Bill Richardson was going to be at Common Man in Concord that night. He asked me if he could buy me a beer. This isn't a trick question, is it? I just figured, since you got me high, and I liked that. There was the whole fair is fair thing, which I respect. But even beyond that, there was an equilibrium to it. All the best sidekicks had an equilibrium to them, don't you think? Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Woodward and Bernstein, Cheech and Chong, all the greats. They both bring something to the table, and the total is more than the sum of the parts. Equilibrium can be magic, too. Do you know where the Radisson is? I think it used to be the Wayfarer, where Hunter used to hang out during Fear and Loathing on the campaign trail. Oh, yes, it's about 2 blocks from here. Not only is it iconic itself, it's in the middle of Media Central. Cool, let's go. On the way to the bar, we heard a tinny rendition of the chicken dance and Vermin Supreme with a megaphone. Yes, you are all chickens, Republican front runners. Newt, Ron Paul, the whole lot of you. Why will you not debate me? And what other candidates promises you a pony? Yes, I will barcode your ass, and I'll barcode the pony's ass, and they better match up, or you're in big trouble. Remember, a vote for Vermin Supreme is a vote completely thrown away. Nate was soaking it all in like only a first timer to the carnival can, especially first timers to Vermin. Is he serious? Obviously not, but oddly so in a funny kind of way. Anyone here have a bumper? Nate bet. I do. Then you need something to stick on the bumper. Remember, vote no on yes and yes on no. Vermin handed Nate a bumper sticker. The bumper sticker said, vote no on yes and yes on no. And use this bumper sticker to remind you. Remember to vote for me if you think the time has come for mandatory toothbrushing. Nate, you could tell, valued his new bumper sticker like it was gold. Fool's gold? Maybe. But just in case. I'm not even sure the first time I saw Vermin, but I'll never forget seeing his picture in the paper the first time. I think he had a clown's nose on, and of course the boot on his head, plus his big bushy beard. Who the hell is this guy? And what's he doing in front of the State House while Hillary is filing her nomination papers? Silly question. Getting on the cover of the Concord Monitor, that's what he's doing. As Nate and I started to head toward the Radisson, we heard Vermin's voice one last time. Yes, my friends, all politicians of Vermin, I am Vermin Supreme. At the Radisson, he asked if they carried switchback beer. They didn't. That's my beer. I'm a brewer there. Like your job? Love my job. And you could tell he meant it. We finished a quick one, and then we stepped out of the Radisson and were in the midst of media world. It seemed every network had a studio there. There were all sorts of geek celebrities there. I mean, we're talking C-SPAN celebrities. And if that ain't geek, then geek don't exist. Nate's eyes had that kind of kid in a candy store glow to them. The first time at the carnival is like any other maiden voyage. Everything is so new. It can only be that new once. Let's get out in the street. You never know what'll happen out there. It all sounds good to me. Another common condition of the first timer. So we hit the street. You see what maniacs were loose tonight. With 2 days before the primary, a kind of combination euphoria mixed with desperation was known to settle in. If you're looking for confrontations waiting to happen, you could do worse than a Ron Paul rally. Or even a street corner. On one side, Ron Paul fanatics. On other corners, any candidate's supporters. It almost didn't matter who. They were all gung-ho. But Ron Paul fans are just fucking crazy. Walking up Elm Street, we started chatting with a one-issue Ron Paul fan. The issue was marijuana, and it was enough of an issue for this guy to spend a January evening waving a sign at passers-by, hoping they'll honk their approval. And it was while we were talking to the guy when another guy announced that everybody was going to march over to where the taping was going to happen. What taping would that be? I know I'd sound like a doofus asking, but how else you going to learn? The equal time taping. I had forgotten that tonight was Fox's Republican debate, which had decided that Ron Paul's 10% poll made him a minor candidate and not deserving of a place in the debate. Yet Giuliani's 3% support made him a first tier candidate. I never really did understand math. Anyway, a local station gave Ron Paul his own bully pulpit, a half hour all to himself, to be on air just as the debates were on another network. At any rate, that was starting soon, and we were going to have a little parade to the studio. Right around then, somebody handed Nate a Ron Paul sign. He tried to look like he was glad to be carrying it. I'm not sure he pulled it off, but it was a valiant effort. It was during the parade that Nate told me about a theory that I want to clear up right now, nip some rumors right in the bud. Nate had this kind of far out theory that Hunter Thompson was really Deep Throat. Whoa, what the fuck are they smoking in Vermont? Except that when he writes it down, he claims it was Spike's theory. That's when I said, let's not call this character Spike. I mean, to be honest, in this place I sometimes wonder about my sanity. I may be insane, but I'm not crazy. Don't get me wrong, I'm the sanest one in my neighborhood. Not that it's the same neighborhood, but still. Hunter Thompson, Deep Throat? Put him down for Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny, too. I shouldn't be too harsh on Nate. I probably believed some real lines of crap when I was his age. Jesus, I wouldn't be surprised if I still do. Hope and change, for instance. The event itself made my eyes glaze over. We had great seats, though. Somebody said, "Non-committed voters, this way." You're not committed? That's me, uncommitted. This way. Great view. But a great view of Barry Goldwater Jr. is still Barry Goldwater Jr. All in all, though, the joke was on them. They didn't want uncommitted Rhode Island voters anyway. The problem with good seats is that you can't screw when you've had enough. Anyway, we had another beer for the road, then a bowl for the road, then we listened to Fish all the way to Concord. This left, this right, one more right. Here we are. Before you knew it, I was at Rod and Erica's place. They weren't home, so I knew to go in by the garage door. So within a minute, after the loud noise of the garage door opening and closing, I disappeared from the night. That's what I gave Nate, my disappearing act.
I have a different question about money. I really want the current president out.
Right.
I want him out.
Right.
A lot of people agree with that, feel that way. And he's just spending so much money. How can you compete on that level when you're taking the matching grants?
The American people provide the money to the Democratic Party that we need to win, because we're going to win on the issues.
Right.
I don't know how it's going to be when anybody else is a nominee, but when I'm the nominee, they're going to identify with me, because I'll bring Republicans and moderates and independents over to the Democratic Party, because they'll look at Bush, they'll look at me, and they'll realize they don't have anything in common with George W. Bush. He's a wealthy kid who had all the privileges in life, and I'm a poor kid who made it. We're total opposites. And I'm the one that represents making it in America, not George Bush. They'll come with me.
Good luck, General.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'd like to have your support, sir.
Yeah, go ahead, pile in. Take a picture.
Can I have your
Was there anything else I can tell you?
I love your tie.
So I have some time.
She's a proud veteran. I'm a nurse too. I've read a lot about you. No questions.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.